Good evening, everyone. My name is Sharif Nakfi. I'm the director at World Speech Academy. So today's topic is how do we improve the basics of our webinars? First things first, what are the common mistakes? Secondly, how do we counter-attack those common mistakes? So the first one we can see here is that there is too much detail that can be condensed down. Now if you look at the sentence below here, we can see that if this was on a PowerPoint presentation or a webinar, there's too much information there. And if you start reading off of that information, it will make it very boring and people will get lost in what you're trying to say. So I'll just read it out for you here. What we will be looking at today is how communication can push us to do certain things. We can build a world together where everyone can understand each other no matter what the language. A simple translator system like the one used on the dinosaurs in that cartoon. You can shorten that, condense it and make it concise, and we'll look later how you can condense that. The second common mistake is that there are too many images. If you have too many images, people again are going to be distracted. They're going to look at the pictures more than they're going to listen to your voice. Next one. Using music in the background that is too distracting or too loud. Now I'm going to play this example here. Hopefully you can hear it. I'm going to speak at the same time. I'm going to speak about how you improve your webinars, what to do and what not to do. I'm also going to talk about how to improve your public speaking and your confidence. And as you can hear, it is quite loud and it's quite hard to hear me now. Having music in the background that is distracting and too loud is just going to make your webinar worse. Nobody's going to listen to what you're trying to say. They're going to listen to the music more, or they may even tune out, or may even leave the webinar that you're trying to host. The next common mistake is incorrect punctuation, spelling, or grammar. When you've written something on a PowerPoint presentation, make sure that even though it is short, you have the correct spelling and the correct punctuation and grammar. Let's say, for instance, someone just wants to read your presentation and they don't really want to listen to your voice. They just want to go quickly through each of the PowerPoint presentations. If they've had a look at what you've put on there and it's not clear or understandable, and your wording is all over the place and your grammar is completely wrong, it's going to be very hard for that person to understand what you're trying to say. The next common mistake, your voice. How loud is your voice? Are you very, very loud? Or are you very, very quiet? What's your tone? What's your tone like? Are you angry? Are you happy? Or are you soft and calm? What is your diction like? Are you pronouncing each word correctly? And the emphasis. Are you putting emphasis in the correct places or in the correct words? I'm going to play an example of a bad example.
Hello, welcome to this special edition for the webinar I'm doing today. This is a very interesting idea. Communication is very important.
Alright, so you can get from that that is pretty bad. You'll be surprised that a lot of people do speak like that when they're presenting. You don't want to be like that. That's very boring and very unprofessional. So how do we counterattack the common mistakes? Number one, make sure you have a clear plan of what you want to include in your presentation. Create a structure. Make sure you know what you're talking about. Because if you don't know what you're talking about, you're going to be all over the place. And again, people are not going to understand what you're saying. Number two, before you do your presentation, read through each slide out loud to make sure it is clear and understandable. Now that's not just clear and understandable for yourself, but clear and understandable for other people. Practice in front of someone else. Practice your presentation. Make sure they understand what you're trying to say. Make sure that it is clear to them. Again, don't use too many images on each slide. I would recommend that you use a maximum of 2 images per slide. You can put them around the slide, maybe in the corner. Don't make them too big, because if you make them too big, again, that's very distracting. If you really want to use music, use it at the beginning, but not during. But if you want to put it in during the presentation, then just decrease the volume. And people just test it out. Can you still hear yourself in the presentation when you've recorded it and you play it back? Next point here. Ensure your own delivery is rehearsed properly and that you have the confidence, clarity, and are able to engage your audience with your own voice. Bring out your personality. Don't be robotic. Don't speak like this. Don't be like the previous example that I just played to you. Have those emotions that you have. Why was your webinar great? Not good, great. How is it great? And why should people listen to what you're saying? If you bring your personality out and it's natural, it's not only fun, but it's much better for yourself and the people listening and watching your webinar. So if we go back to the first example of trying to condense down your sentences, I've already read the thing at the top, but if we have a look at the sentence below, it would read as, how does communication convince us? We can create a better world where everyone is understood. A translation device can be used. Now this short sentence, it can be used to expand upon. You don't need to keep it to that. If you want to keep it to that, then fine. But as long as there is enough information for the people to understand what you're trying to say, then that's fine. That's good. But the above example just it restricts you. You just read out the whole thing, and again, it takes away from your own personality, and it diminishes your own voice. You're just reading off a screen, and it doesn't allow you to open up about that point that you want to make. How to construct your webinar. What is it about? What are the main points? How will you conclude by summing up all those main points? This is a very important thing, especially in sales pitches, when you're speaking to another business or you're just speaking within the business about, say, a presentation. Let's say, for example, you're doing a sales pitch. If you're doing a sales pitch to a company that doesn't know you, give a brief history about yourself and the company. A very brief one. Don't go into too much detail. They don't have a lot of time to do that, to listen. Because you're selling to them, you've got to convince them. So then you talk about the main features and benefits of your product. And then you would conclude your presentation, you would conclude your webinar by just having notes of all the main features and benefits in very, very short sentences. For example, if I was to talk about this guitar, I'm going to play guitar, and I'm not very good at it, but I'll give it a go. How you construct that final conclusion. This Martin Smith guitar is easy to play, it has a great sound, and it is cost effective. Now obviously if you're talking about more things, you would have more bullet point notes, but try and keep those bullet point notes as short as possible. Because if you read over what you said again, about the features and benefits, whatever it is, it's too much. The best thing to do when thinking about what you're going to include in your webinar is write it down as a list on a piece of paper or on a Word document or wherever you want to write it down, but don't put it on the presentation yet. The words, the sentences, the paragraphs, the ideas that you want to think about, that you want to include, put them on a piece of paper. That's your area to think about those ideas. Don't put it on the presentation. That should be the final thing that you do. Put all the main information that you've got together on the presentation. This not only helps you to focus, it also helps you to keep your presentation clear, because sometimes some people, they write down all their notes on the presentation itself and then they try and put it together into a structured webinar. Keep it separate to your actual webinar. So that concludes the webinar today. If you do have any questions, please visit our Facebook page, which is World Speech Academy. Send me a message, or you can send me an email at worldspeechacademy@gmail.com, and I'll try and answer your questions as best as I can. For now, that concludes the first webinar. Take care and have a great weekend.